Okay, I've made it back from the jungle, which is no small miracle because I walked about 3 planks, which are like 7 meters wide with a huge deep ravine underneath. That had I not been able to balance, like I can't believe I did, I could be like all legs broken right now. But anyway, and I met an anaconda, but that's another story for another time. I'm back. There are 2 Shui people dead. I've spent a lot of this trip with Shui leaders, so that's, I can tell you it's really, really devastating for a community. And by dead, I mean they've been murdered by the military. So this is in a situation where they have tried to take back the buildings which on the land where all their homes were bulldozed in order to make room to build homes for Chinese workers who are coming in to irreversibly contaminate this ecosystem and destroy their way of life at the behest of the Chinese president and the Ecuadorian president. And no men, I don't even care if they're president, they do not have the right, I want to say they have a lack of wisdom to destroy an ecosystem that is this exquisite and so clearly the domain of nature. Just spending the last days right so deep in the jungle and trekking through the jungle, and I took a 4 or 6 hour, I don't remember, 4 or 6 hour boat ride down the jungle, hence my sunburnt nose, and down one of the rivers. Wow, just so beautiful. It's just impossible to imagine that people intentionally try and destroy this ecosystem, which is essential for the global ecological balance. Everyone's like, whoa, hysteria about climate change, and Leonardo DiCaprio's off promoting a global tax agreement that has no enforceable promises. Well, laws that should enforce those promises that exist already, so no need for the promises, by the way, laws that should enforce protection of this ecosystem and the people are constantly violated. And the International Criminal Court is taking too long with this case. They have this case there right now. They have the power to protect. They have the power to end the impunity against perpetrators, even at the highest level, and they have the responsibility to do so and apply this law, but they're just not acting fast enough. Maybe the review is advancing well, but they have the power to stop this crime now, and they're not. So the United Nations, I have presented them with the only other international legal mechanism that they have the power to advance that could also preemptively and comprehensively protect this ecosystem, and they are also refusing to act. So we have to remember that that's what the United Nations is currently. It's a hangout for global leaders who are largely making decisions to destroy ecosystems and populations, regardless of their false pretend promises on the COP agreement, climate change, which basically the only actual result of is to introduce a new global tax and trade agreement and does nothing enforceable to protect the ecosystem or change the habits of those who destroy right now. So to me, I always say it's a joke, and based on false science. I'm sorry, Leonardo. I have a pet thing about Leonardo right now because I've come here and some money has been given to some of the leaders, but most of the leaders haven't got the money, and they're the ones who are fighting industrial destruction, and that money was promoted to fight industrial destruction, which does make it harder because when people like me and the very few others who are actually fighting industrial destruction right in there with the indigenous people here, not NGOs taking their story and telling, showing pictures and raising money and keeping it, not passing any of the money on and not doing anything to actually stop the destruction. There are a few of us who actually do work to stop the destruction with legal mechanisms that could work against all odds, but are the only chance, the last chance. And we, when it looks like someone's done the job already, we find it even harder to get support. Going through the rainforest made it so apparent how difficult it is for these people to protest. Their communities are full of young people who want to defend this ecosystem. It's amazing. The spirit of protection is there, and we're lucky that the rainforest is full of these communities. You fly for miles and then you see this community, it's full of young people. It's amazing. But look, the cost of getting out of the jungle is just so prohibitive. It would have cost us $500 for 4 people to go in and out on this trip, and we went one way, kind of the hard way, but the beautiful way. So how do you mobilize thousands of people to come out of the jungle and protest and try to protect this land? And it's our only chance, because if the world's highest governance governance organisation and the world's highest court are too slow or unwilling to act, then there's no justice and there's no protection. The only thing that's left is the people on the front line who are absolutely starved of money. They have nothing. Even the leaders, they run out of money on their phone. They can't call each other for days, you know? And yet all of the contamination, all of the industrial development progresses against them. And I can tell you from being with them in the community that it's terrifying, the thought of your water being contaminated. Because you're there, you're drinking it, you're bathing in it, you're cooking with it. Everything is reliant on that water system. I look like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Wear more sunblock. Anyway, look, the thing is that people who want to protect the rainforest, who have financial means, are desperately needed to mobilise support directly for the Indigenous people. This is a desperate, desperate need. It is the only chance of protecting the rainforest. The investment given must be responsibly given. It cannot be given to a few tribes and the ones who are just going to do sustainable development projects to make life more comfortable when most of the tribes have no money, very uncomfortable life, and are the ones fighting to protect this ecosystem. So that's really important, that the money is allocated in the right way, it's given directly to the people, and it's shared equally or responsibly, and it's directed and with agreements to enable them to fight to protect this ecosystem. We do have a situation here where there are a couple of presidents and a couple of other countries are involved as well, who are making a decision to destroy the ecosystem of the condor, to destroy an ecosystem that the world needs for global survival and balance, for future generations to enjoy dignity, for that sort of climate change story, which is kind of a bit fuzzy because it's kind of taxing carbon dioxide, which is the breath of life, you know. We breathe it out, trees breathe it in, the ocean breathes it in. It's like totally naturally accommodating everything that happens here. It's like a genius gas. It's not pollution and it shouldn't be taxed, and it's irrelevant to the environmental destruction. What should be stopped is the profit from environmental destruction. What should be stopped is the licensing of environmental destruction. And we have the laws and mechanisms to do that with the ICC and the United Nations, and they are not currently acting. So what's left is the Indigenous people here on the front line ready to fight, but they need support, they need names. And the fact that the police, I mean, I had an exchange with President Correa where we asked to meet to discuss alternatives to sustainable development, alternatives of sustainable development to the environmental destruction. And unfortunately, he wasn't able to free up the time in his schedule, but I did then ask that there was a peaceful resolution to the conflict that was happening in Nankins, so that the people didn't get destroyed. And, I mean, basically now 2 people have been shot dead, and it will be devastating for the people, but it will be making them furious. And, you know, if the Indigenous continue to mobilise against this, against all odds, and I mean, the cost is so prohibitive for them to do it, but if they continue to mobilise, as, by the way, the world's only defence for this ecosystem, it would seem, since the courts and the UN don't work, then there will be more death. And no one is, I mean, I don't know who gives all the money to NGOs, but none of that money comes to the people to fight. None, not 1 cent comes. I mean, I'm giving money. When I'm abroad, I'm giving money. Protect Ecuador are giving money. I know there are probably a few others, but most give money to NGOs, and that money just gets wound up in protest art and storytelling that goes nowhere to stop the harm. So I don't know, I mean, again, sometimes I feel like my message has fallen deaf ears, but if there are people out there who actually genuinely want to protect the rainforest, trust me, make contact, talk to me, I'll explain exactly what's happening here, and, we need help, they need help, otherwise there's going to be more death, a lot.